Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are just very solid all round, and I would potentially go as far as saying that these guys are my favourite Scottish brewery, mainly because of how diverse their different releases are and how solid their interpretations of the different styles tend to be. Now, the beer we're going to have a look at today is from a series of beers that these guys do that is very highly rated, but one that I haven't really touched upon on the channel, which is a bit of a shame to be honest, but we will see about reviewing more of these over the next little while. But it's a style, as I say, that we've had from these guys a number of times before, one that I know they can do very well, and it also has a twist to it that I know I'm going to like as well. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. It's always cool to return to this brewery, so hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then we are going to head to Galashiels in the Scottish Borders region, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Tempest Brewing Company. So this one comes from their barrel series. This is barrel number 3, smoked Islay. It's a 13% Imperial Stout, and this one has been aged in Caol barrels. So yeah, this one should be really quite nice actually. Caol are one of my favourite Islay whisky distilleries. You know, their whiskies always have this lovely kind of sweet, brown, sugary and more grassy kind of peaty character to them. So yeah, seeing an Imperial Stout from my favourite Scottish brewery aged in one of my favourite whisky distillery barrels, I think just, you know, it really just kind of caught my eye. But I actually have had this beer sitting in my cupboard here in Scotland for quite a wee while. I'm not sure exactly how old this one is, but you know, when it's a whisky barrel aged Imperial Stout, you don't particularly have to care, to be quite honest with you. It's going to last for a good while. But yeah, always cool to return to Tempest Brewing Company. And yeah, I think we're going to enjoy this one. So let's crack on and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. And this will be the first of a few Tempest reviews that you're going to see over the next little while. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Tempest Brewing Company before, and we will, as I say, add more to that list in the very near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember that you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up, and failing that you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Scottish playlist along with a number of other things, and we will be adding to that list over the next wee while, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And you can of course check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. You'll find some really interesting things in there too. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit once again about Tempest Brewing Company. So Tempest Brewery was founded back in 2010 by Gavin and Anika Meiklejohn. And Anika had trained as a chef in New Zealand, but then the couple returned to Scotland in 2007 to run the Caol's bar down in Caol, also in the Scottish Borders region. But Gavin had previously worked for Whistler Brewing Company in British Columbia and Western Canada, and so he had an appreciation for craft beer, and he'd actually taken some brewing courses in Sydney and Australia, and then homebrewed in his garage in Wellington in New Zealand using a small 50-litre brew kit. But Gavin is joined at the brewery by Alan Rice, who acts as the business development manager, and he previously worked for Stewart Brewery in Edinburgh and also spent a number of years in New Zealand and Australia as well. So they had a lot of things in common when they met. But the brewery was previously housed in old dairy buildings in Caol, and this brewery that they had there, the brew kit was largely homemade and engineered to produce big flavour beers on a kind of shoestring budget. But the beers from that Tempest were producing proved to be very, very popular, and so they had to expand and they moved to their current and bigger home at the Tweedbank Industrial Estate in Galashiels, and they've been working there over the last couple of years and just building up capacity and things like this. But in June of 2019 they submitted plans to build a new brewery building with a bar and restaurant on the site of the former Eldon Mill, which is very close to the Tweedbank train station. But this move is still yet to be finalised from what I gather, but these days they have a brewery tap room that they run on the weekends that you can go and check out. I actually filmed an out and about video there maybe about a year and a half or 2 years ago or something like that. I forget how long ago it was, but you can go and visit Tempest Brewery and drink some of the beers in the on-site tap room, which is great. But as of July 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 165 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and I would say that these guys are one of the most consistently experimental and solid breweries that you're going to find in Scotland. You know, for me, the long white cloud and the longer white cloud, you know, New Zealand hopped West Coast style IPAs, those are lovely. You know, the old Parochial is potentially my favourite kind of craft brewed Scotch ale here in Scotland, and yeah, there's a number of other beers that are definitely worth checking out from this brewery as well. The Modern Hellas is a really nice kind of sessioner if you're into that sort of thing, and the Pale Armadillo is great as well. So yeah, Tempest Brewing Company are one of the Scottish brewers that I would highly recommend that you check out if you get a chance. Their beers can be a little bit difficult to get a hold of because they are, you know, still a very small operation. I think it's only like 8 people or so that are actually involved in the company, but they do some really great stuff. So as I say, if you come across some of their beers, this is one of the breweries that I highly recommend that you check out. But yeah, that's everything we can really say about Tempest Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, then you can check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different kinds of beers that they've done. But yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll let you have a wee look at the can art on this one. So when it comes to the Barrel series, you will find them in these kind of smaller 330ml cans. You can see that this one has a gold top. I'm not sure how many have actually been released in this particular series. I'm sure it's about 5. I've seen 5 or 6, but potentially when I've been away from Scotland it is a little bit more than that. But yeah, this one, as you can see, is barrel number 3. It tells you a wee bit about the beer on the side here. So this one is known as, it says, known as Whisky Island. Islay is the centre of smoky, peaty, single malt universe. For good reason, their barrels take centre stage in our cellar. Aging Imperial Stouts in these beautiful casks is a high wire of accentuating the rich peatiness of the cask while surrounding out the unmistakable iodine and smoky flavours of the barrel. Once the smoke clears, the flavours of rich fruit cake, dark chocolate and molasses emerge. The result is an intense, decadent stout to lose yourself in. So this one, as I said earlier, it's been aged in Caol, I'm not sure of the exact pronunciation, barrels, but it's been aged there for 12 months. And the malts in this one apparently are peat smoked, Munich roast barley, and then DRC. So yeah, as we said earlier, 13% Islay Whisky Barrel Aged Imperial Stout one. This will be an absolute monster. But there you can see on the front of the can, this is the more kind of modern Tempest Brewing Company symbol, and the kind of lightning bolt glass is one of their older symbols. If you go back to the very first reviews that I did from Tempest, you'll see that symbol was a little bit more prominent. Like I said, I'm really not sure exactly where I bought this beer. It could have been the Caledonian Craft Beer Merchant along in Dunfermline, but yeah, I honestly don't know what I paid for this one of that. This beer is one that I have been sitting on for maybe a year or two, and it says it actually says on the bottom here that it was packaged on the 28th of October 2021. So yeah, I think I must have bought this one around Christmas 2021 or something like that. So yeah, a little bit of a monster, this one, we could say, and you can feel the density of this thing. It's you know, dense as fuck when you actually hold the can, I have to say. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have. The barrel number 3, smoked Islay from Tempest Brewing Company in Galashiels in the Scottish border region, a 13%, 12-month Caol Islay Whisky Barrel Aged Imperial Stout. Should be awesome. So yeah, I've had a number of Islay Whisky Barrel Aged Stouts from Finland before, not that many from Scotland. come to think of it, which is quite interesting. But the Finns, of course, because of Sati, they love these big kind of smoky flavours that you're going to get from Islay whiskey, which is understandable. But yeah, I have to say, this beer is poured absolutely beautifully, but pretty much as you would expect of an Imperial Stout, of course. So yeah, you can see this is poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say, kind of medium to dark tan head there. You can see some medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid and a few more foamy ones just going above that. But yeah, it does look really damn nice, actually. I do like how this beer appears, to be honest with you. You can see the head is just fading away to be a very thin kind of foamy layer over the top, but it's leaving a nice kind of ring around the edge of the glass. But you can see this beer is pretty much black as night, a lovely kind of dark ebony rosewood colour, actually. So yeah, looks absolutely great. This is exactly what you would expect of an Imperial Stout. Of course, remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour of it too. But yeah, when it comes to black beers like Imperial Stout, it's really difficult to kind of change the colour of these beers with you know, barrel aging and stuff like that. I've only seen it done once or twice, but not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this beer. It looks pretty much as you would expect of any Imperial Stout, to be honest with you. So yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of this one. It is pretty much as you would expect of any Imperial Stout. But the one thing I will say about this one before we actually taste it, I hope that it's got a nice balance to it, because quite often when it comes to Scotch whisky barrel aging, compared to bourbon and cognac and so on, Scotch whisky is quite powerful when it comes to barrel aging, so it can take over the flavour of the beer. But knowing Tempest, these guys know what they're doing. So let's just put that thought aside at the moment, and we'll have a little look at the aroma of this one then. Let's do it. Oh yeah. I'm going to say straight away, the aroma of this it's right up my street. I kind of knew as soon as I saw it. That's probably the reason why I've bought this one, is because I've seen it's Caol barrel aged, and then it's just been in my cupboard here in Scotland, and I forgot that I've had this one, because I would have taken it over to Sweden otherwise. But yeah, aroma wise, this is pretty damn good. It gives you everything you'd want. You can smell the barrel in this one and the backbone. You know, you've got everything you'd want from that. A bit of the Caol whiskies, as I said to you, they've got a bit of a more kind of grassy and sort of toasty brown sugary smoke to them. So you've got all of this going on in the barrel. You've got a lovely kind of more roasty, toasty type RIS quality coming out from the stout itself. There's a little bit of hoppiness in there, and you've got a wee bit of a kind of fruity character as well. So this beer really is giving you everything that you'd want, both from the style and from the fact that it's a kind of Islay barrel aged whisky. So let's break this down and describe the aroma for you a wee bit more in depth. So when you sugar the beer up, you do get more of the barrel out of it, I would say that. So you can smell the backbone of the beer. You get a lovely little bit of that kind of slightly more dry European oak coming out of it. You can smell the kind of nice whisky, the lovely whisky note in there as well. The spirit comes out of this beer quite obviously. So within the wood, you can smell. Caol for me is just a very distinctive whisky because I like it so much. But you can smell a little bit of the kind of sweet, toasty, brown, sugary character in there, of the peat. And it's got that grassiness and that slight earthiness to it as well. I mean, the way that this beer goes together from that particular perspective is really, really nice. And like I say, the more that you sugar this beer up, the more that you get of that barrel there. And it's like I say, you get the grassiness and the kind of wetness, the mossiness almost of the peat in this one. But then you start to get the you really start to get the kind of stout coming above that. You start to get the kind of sweetness and the brown sugar from the whisky itself a little bit later on too. But yeah, the barrel is pretty prominent in the aroma of this beer, so I hope it doesn't take over the flavour, if you like. It doesn't, you know, I hope the beer's got a good balance to it, is basically what I'm saying. But yeah, on top of that, you start to get the actual elements of the stout itself. And I think it's fair to say that this is a more old school Russian Imperial Stout type beer, this one. So you've got that lovely kind of bit of roasty, toasty, well-fired, blackened bread crust coming out of this one. But then, above that, you start to get, you get a little touch of like rye bread out of this one, like a sweetened rye bread. But then, yeah, you've got this kind of chocolate brownie, chocolate muffin, chocolate cakey type thing that they're talking about in the can. That really does come out in this one. So yeah, you can really smell that in this beer for sure. Yeah, I really do like how that goes together. That, as I say, gets a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, a little bit of rye bread, then that big cakey, muffiny, kind of chocolate brownie type vibe to the beer. Above that, you've got a wee bit more of a, as I say, you've got a little bit of a more kind of chocolatey character coming out of this one. There's a bit of a spectrum of chocolate in this beer. So at one end you've got maybe an 80% cocoa chocolate, but then further forward on the nose you're getting a wee bit more of a kind of 50-ish% cocoa chocolate. Not enough to be milk chocolate, definitely dark chocolate all the way, but yeah, you can feel that the chocolate kind of mellows out a little bit in this beer. That's definitely fair to say. Yeah, so the way that that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, and above that, you start to get the kind of brown sugary notes out of the beer. There's a little bit of that. You do get the treacle molasses that they're talking about for sure, but there's also a little bit of a kind of toasty brown sugar in there. Yeah, a bit more of a toasty brown sugar, a little bit of a sweeter caramel to it as well, but then yeah, lots of kind of treacle molasses to this one. As they're kind of saying on the can there too, the key if you're going to use Scotch whisky barrels is to basically design the stout so that it balances the flavours of these rather than letting the barrel take over. And you get the impression from the aroma that they've been successful in that, so we'll need to see when we actually taste the thing how that comes out of it. But I think that covers the malty and sort of barrel side of the beer. So beyond that, you have the kind of hoppy side of the beer. And you have to remember, with this being an Imperial Stout, it's not the most hop-forward of beer styles, and it's also it's been aged in barrels, so a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one as well. And of course, I've kept the can for like a year or however long I've had it, I couldn't tell you. So yeah, the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one, but regardless, you do still get the remnants of some things going on with this one. There's a little bit of earthiness in there. There's a little bit of kind of herbal character as well, but some nice floral notes and a wee bit of grassiness in there too. So yeah, it kind of gives you everything that you would expect from the Imperial Stout in that regard. On the fruity side of things, it's also doing what you'd expect. There's a little bit of a I'm getting a lot of kind of blackcurrant and blackberry from this one, maybe a bit of an oily fig, but not so much in the way of sharper raisins and plums and stuff like this. But I think we will get more of that as we actually go into the flavour and taste the thing. So that's going to be really interesting to see. But yeah, on the aroma, more of a kind of blackcurrant, blackberry and sort of figgy type quality. So yeah, it's quite interesting in that regard. So I like it. I think we can leave it at that for the aroma, to be honest. But as I always say to you, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of a beer before you get stuck into it. But it is definitely time to try this one. So yeah, this one is the barrel number 3, Smoked Islay, an Imperial Stout, 13% ABV from Tempest Brewing Company in Galashiels in the Scottish border region, aged of course in Caol whisky barrels for 12 months. Let's get stuck into this one and see what it's all about. Slàinte, Caol, cheers. Oh yeah. That is pretty damn nice. Yeah. I'm just going to say straight away, a big thumbs up to Tempest with this one. Never doubt these guys. Never doubt them, because they will pull things out of the hat. Yeah, this one is pretty damn good. It's really impressive. But I mean, it's, if people were to ask me my favourite beer from Tempest, you know, I'd probably still say, you know, I'd probably still say the Old Parochial, probably just because it's my favourite style. But you know, you try beers like this as well, and you can see just how good this brewery is. This is the difficult thing with Scotch whisky barrel aged Imperial stouts, as I said, is to get the balance in there. And Tempest have really pulled it off pretty damn well with this one. I love a big smokiness. You know, I'd quite happily have Ardbeg and Talisker and Lafroig and all these kind of big dry smoky whiskies. But to do it with a distillery barrel like Caol, it's a really interesting one. They have found a really nice balance in this beer, and for me, the fact that they found that balance is what really shows how good the guys at Tempest actually are. But yeah, this is lovely. It gives you everything you'd want. You've got a lovely kind of, the barrel kind of sits there and becomes a bit more prominent in the aftertaste. The stout itself is lovely and smooth, shows you everything you'd want, but it's got a wee bit of a kind of RIS type quality to it. But it's also got a wee bit of an almost milk stouty type quality to it. I'm just seeing on the ingredients list there that they're listing wheat and oats, and so that kind of makes sense, to be honest with you. But it's got a lovely silky, the stout is lovely and silky in its mouth. You've got a bit of fruit, a bit of hoppy character. This beer is just very well rounded and gives you basically everything that you'd want. So yeah, let's break this down and just describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. We'll start on the middle third of the palate, as we always do. So, the backbone of this beer, you can feel that lovely, smooth, but slightly dry, European oaky type quality just forming the backbone of the beer. And it gets drier and drier the further into the aftertaste that you go. Now above that, of course, you start to get the spirit layer out of this one. And the Caol whisky, as I said to you, it has the peaty character that you're going to get out of Caol. It has this lovely little bit of grassiness to it, and then it starts to show you the sweetness. So you have this earthy, dry peat, this earthy, grassy, peaty character just sitting within the spirit on the top, but then later on you start to get that wee touch of like toasty brown sugar sitting on top of the wood as well. And yeah, as I say, the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer, the more you get of the barrel. But Caol is a very... Caol, when I think about it, is probably one of the more mild... it's not the mildest, but it is one of the more mild, smoky, mildly smoky Islay whiskies that I can think of. But it's the way the barrel goes into this one is so nice, actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that from that perspective too. But above the kind of spirit layer on this one, so we've got the wood, then you've got the spirit. Above that, you get a little bit of that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust coming out of this beer, and it gives it the impression of a bit. It gives you a little bit of that kind of RIS, Russian Imperial Stout type quality. But other than that, the stout itself is really very smooth and very silky and almost kind of milky, like a milk stout in a sense. So, above the kind of black roasty toasty bread crust, there is a little touch of like an almost rye bready layer for me, and that takes a wee bit of time to come out, but it builds a good bridge with the barrel actually, which I think is really nice. Above that, you start to get the more, above that, you start to get a more kind of cakey, like chocolate muffin, chocolate brownie type quality out of this one. So you can feel that chocolate muffiny, chocolate brownie type layer coming out of the beer, which is really very, very nice. Toward the back of that middle third of your palate, it's got a little bit more kind of dryness and things to it, but as you come further forward it gets a little bit smoother and a little bit sweeter. You perhaps get just a tiny little bit of a kind of woody character mixing in with that as well. But above the kind of cakey, muffiny type layer, you can feel the chocolate. So at the back of that middle third of your palate, you get a sort of 80-ish% cocoa chocolate, but then as you move further forward toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you're getting a more kind of 60% cocoa chocolate coming out of the beer. So yeah, I do like how that pieces together. So yeah, the way that that happens to go together, I think, is really very, very nice. Yeah, and above the kind of chocolatey notes, the chocolatey character at the back of that middle third of your palate is almost a little bit charred, but then above that you start to get the kind of brown sugary notes out of the beer. So you can feel there's a layer of a kind of toasty brown sugar sitting above that, and then you get the more kind of, you get a bit of an almost, there's like a circle in the middle of your palate where there's a sort of leathery base, and then above that you get the more oily kind of treacle molasses type note coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really quite nice, and again that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I was expecting maybe a little bit more brown sugary sweetness out of this beer, but it's more like a kind of dry, toasty brown sugar that you get out of this one. And the thing with this beer, the two things you can do with Imperial Stouts, you can do like a double mash, which gives you a really big kind of sticky mouthfeel, or you can do like a longer wort boil, which is going to give you a more kind of complex flavour. It's a bit hard to tell with this beer because the barrel is quite prominent, but I don't think, just judging by the sort of flavours you're getting out of this one, I don't think they've used either of those techniques with this one, which is kind of surprising when you've got a 13%er. But that said, the more likely of the two candidates would be a double mash, if it was to be any, because you're always going to sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel, depending on you know, if you barrel age the thing or not. You're always going to sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel. But yeah, the brown sugary notes in this one are quite dry and quite toasty and a bit leathery as well, so that sits on top of that chocolatey layer. But other than that, the complexity in this beer is definitely within the middle third of the palate in this beer, but I think that covers everything we need to say about the malt and the barrel. So let's go on to the back third of the palate then. As I always say, the back third of the palate is going to give you similar flavours but at different intensities, but do remember the trend that sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, drier flavours come out a little bit further back. Yeah, so on that border region between middle and back third of your palate, then you can feel there's a little bit of a bready build-up in there, a kind of rye bready character and a bit of a more kind of brown bready character. But yeah, the way that that goes together, I have to say, is really quite nice. And on you get similar layers on that back third of the palate, but they just tend to be a little bit more roasty and dry. So you can feel the oaky, woody layer is a little bit drier. The smoky character from the spirit that sits there is of course a little bit drier, a little bit more pungent. Then you've got the kind of rye bready layer which sits there again, that's a little bit drier, but also a little bit lighter and more airy. And then you've got the kind of chocolate cakey layer in there, which feels a little bit more like a dry chocolate sponge cake, and that of course is taller and more airy as well. And above that you've got the more toasty elements of the brown sugar just creeping over the top, and then all the yeasty character coming out of the beer too. So for me, the yeasty character in this beer is quite hard to pick up because of the prominence of the barrel flavours, but it has got a little bit of this almost kind of like rye, light, woody, crispy rye bready character coming out of it, but you get above everything else on that back third. Pardon me, bit of a dry throat there, but yeah, you get everything else up there on that back third of the palate. We'll take a wee sip of this and see if that helps. Yeah, I think I just got something dry in the back of my throat there. It's a bit weird. But yeah, as I say, the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller. then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together. So yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say, pardon me, about the back and middle thirds of your palate with this one. So let's go on to the green component. As I said earlier, our Imperial Stouts, not the most hop forward of beer styles. This one's barrel aged, so the hoppy character will have dropped out even more. Nevertheless, you do get a little bit of earthy character there in the back corners of the palate. As you move further forward, it's a little bit more herbal, and you can feel that it does give you a little bit more kind of floral character as you reach the front corners of the tongue. But round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and a wee bit more kind of grassy and things as well. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I feel is really quite nice. Yeah, on the hoppy side of things, I don't think there's too much else to say. The green component is quite subdued compared to other parts of the beer, but it does add a little bit more depth to the beer. So we'll cover the front third of the palate and the fruity side of things just to round off the flavour section. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of that kind of nice bready build up, and a little bit of rye bread, a little bit of brown bread on top, and then the base of that front third of your palate, you've got a nice kind of, you've got the woody character in there, which feels really smooth. In that case, incidentally, you're getting a little bit more of the kind of brown sugary smoke on top of that, and then you've got a more kind of bready, then you have got a little bit more of a kind of brown bready and cakey note sitting there, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a look at that. So the fruity side of the beer for me, when you take this one in, it does have a little bit of a kind of raisiny or plummy sharpness to it. But then that kind of mellows out. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you get a little touch of raisiny, plummy kind of note there. But yeah, underneath all of that, you do get a little bit of a juicy kind of figgy character. And then as you move, the figgy character comes out mainly as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate. But then as you move into the front half of the front third of your tongue, you're getting a little bit more of a kind of black currant in the base and a blackberry on top. The fruity character in this beer, quite honestly, disappears quite quickly, and then the focus is more on the Islay barrel, which isn't surprising in a sense, but you also get that more kind of milk stouty type quality out of this one. This beer really the beer itself really finds a balance between being an RIS and a milk stout. It's got qualities of both, to be honest with you, but the barrel and the dryness from the barrel and the smokiness and things is what really lingers into the aftertaste with this one. But it's right up my street. But if you don't like smoky whiskey, you might not enjoy this beer as much as me. I think that's definitely fair to say. But yeah, I think that concludes everything we really need to say about the actual flavour of the beer. So we can round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So let's do that. For me, mouthfeel wise, this beer it's definitely, it's bottom end to full bodied, I think that's fair to say. The carbonation is very smooth. It really has quite a smooth and kind of silky mouthfeel to it, to be honest with you. In terms of IBUs, I wouldn't be surprised if this was like 80 IBUs or something like that, because you have got a wee bit of hoppy bitterness there, but you've also got a bit of dryness and things from the wood. You've also got the smokiness and the smokiness from the Caol barrels. You've also got a little bit of the kind of toasty black malt and things from the stout itself. So yeah, this beer does have a good degree of bitterness to it, but you could conflate bitterness with dryness. It's quite a difficult thing to do. My IBU counts are my weakest point of beer reviewing, so as I always say, take them with a bit of a pinch of salt. But the malty base in this beer, you've got the dryness from the barrel, you've got the smokiness in there, you've got a lovely little bit of smoothness both from the bread crust and the cakey side of the beer, a little bit of a dry sweetness the further into the aftertaste that you go, a little touch of fruitiness, but the fruitiness doesn't play much of a role in the flavour of this one. But yeah, the fruity character for me, as I say, a little bit more kind of wet and juicy rather than anything else. But yeah, overall, I think the way this beer goes together is it's really quite nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me, and I've really enjoyed reviewing this one. My first from the Tempest Brewing Company Barrel Series, and we will see about reviewing a few more. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the barrel number 3, the smoked Islay 13% Imperial Stout, aged for 12 months on Caol whisky barrels from Islay, from Tempest. This one comes from Tempest Brewing Company in Galashiels in the Scottish Borders region. My first Tempest review during this trip home. So yeah, won't be the last. Definitely won't be the last. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Tempest Brewing Company as well. And we will absolutely return to these guys at some point again in the near future. But this was a very, very nice introduction to the barrel series, and I want to see about getting a few more of these. So yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Tempest Brewing Company's social media, and I will see you again with another review very, very soon. Slàinte, Caol, and cheers.